name's Skylar Frank and I'm a member of Food Not Lawns London, Canada. Food Not Lawns is an international movement, so it started originally in the United States, but there are branches within the United States and then also in Victoria and London, Ontario. And we're completely grassroots led, so essentially we do different projects to do with local food systems and local food agriculture. So a couple that we worked on this year were garden blitzes, where we took someone's front lawn or backyard and we flipped it into a garden bed so that they're able to produce edibles on their property. As well, we did some local food foraging tours, so we biked around the city of London and checked out some areas where you could find your own edibles that were just growing in the wild. Some other things that we've done are a couple different workshops, things on seed saving, seed sovereignty, how to identify medicinal plants that are right in your backyard already, and how to plant for pollinators. So all of the projects we do are designed by the members of Food Not Lawns, and we're all very passionate about trying to change our local food system for the better.
I'm Margot Dose, and I live here in London in the Wortley Village area, and I am a gardener, urban gardener shall we say, and I have been a farmer when I was younger, grew up on a farm, so I know some things about agriculture and about gardening. Why local urban agriculture is important to me is because, for one thing, we would have some control over our own food production, given that we don't have much choice in the stores, and sometimes even at farmers markets, because if you want to grow organic food, it isn't always available at farmers markets. I became involved with the London Community Gardens project right at the beginning, which is now about 14 years ago, I think, and shared a garden plot at the Blackfriars with someone for quite a while. And I thought this was really a wonderful project for people to get involved in. And it was a bit tough going in the beginning because the soil hadn't been worked for many years there. And so the first few years all we could grow was potatoes and tomatoes basically, because they'll grow almost anywhere. And in the city, across the city, there's 21 community garden plots of maybe 20 to 25 in each plot, so there's quite a few people. It was actually in the London Free Press several times, because the sunflowers grew up all over the place. Maybe some people have seen this in the paper. And I moved around to different plots from year to year, but in the last couple of years I've been sharing one of the larger plots with Robin Harvey, and and Robin actually has worked the soil really well. He's very meticulous about that, so the soil there is really, really good now, and this year we have half of it's potatoes and the rest is squash and some other herbs and some other smaller things. I became involved with Food Not Lawns a few years ago and thought the idea was really good for, again, expanding our knowledge on local and for people if they wanted to turn some of their lawn into gardens instead of, just wasting green space. And I've seen some really wonderful things in London with other people who have turned their yards and so on into really successful gardens. One thing I would love to see is beehives in the community gardens, or in our backyards as well. But as a matter of fact, I voiced this, I was at a meeting at City Hall because I've been involved with another project that I'll tell you about in a second. And because the city actually owns the land for the community gardens project. And so I said, wouldn't it be nice if we could have urban bees in these gardens? I'm sure that we could get beekeepers from the edges of town, and I already know one who might be interested, to take care of these. I think that would be just amazing, because although bees are probably maybe in a little bit better shape, at least the wilder bees, in the city than they are in the country, it would be good if they had more places to actually go to at night, Garlic's restaurant has a beehive up on top of their roof, And I think there's some urban beekeepers around, even though theoretically, I don't know exactly what the law is or the bylaws is on keeping bees in town. Would like to see more community projects, but maybe taken over by neighborhoods themselves, neighborhood associations, rather than necessarily through the community gardens, because it's been fairly successful, but there are drawbacks because the city's involved, the health unit's involved, and others are involved, and there's a lot of rules and regulations and restrictions which are sometimes detrimental to the process. You know, there's like, for instance, theoretically I can't bring my own compost from here, which is basically all organic material that I use, to the community gardens, to the compost plot, to add it to the pile there. It's one of those crazy little, oh yeah, the more bureaucratic something becomes, right? You know how it works. Yeah. So that's one example. There are churches and other groups trying to pull together to garden a bit, and then and teach people about feeding themselves. And so I'd like to see more of that. But again, there's a lot of restrictions involved sometimes. You know, like the health unit gets in there and says, "Oh, we can't do this, can't do that," and we're like, "Okay, do you want people to become healthy, independent? Like, you know, you're calling yourself a health unit, so." It's a learning process for everyone, you know, so sometimes you can develop a dialogue with, you know, the folks at the agencies and so on. And one of the things I've been involved with, my friend Celeste and I, we've started a group called Pollinator Sanctuary London, because we're extremely concerned about the pollinator situation. Mm-hmm. And at first myself, I went to the Advisory Committee for Agriculture at the city, which is a volunteer group, and they go over issues and then they advise the councillors, okay? So that's sort of the process. And we didn't get anywhere with them because the Agricultural Committee, Advisory Committee, is stacked with grain farmers who live not even in the city. So I'm thinking, you're not even in the city, what are you doing advising the city? However, so then we've been going to meetings of the ACE committee, which is the advisory committee to the environment. And there are 13 people, they're volunteers as well. They go over lots of issues dealing with environment and planning to some degree. And then they send their information on to the environment and planning committee. So we've made some presentations to the ACE committee first, and it's been really successful. And then we made a presentation to the actual Environment and Planning Committee, which is made up of 5 councillors. We did that about a month ago, and we're quite successful. So we're now actually working with city staff people who work with the Parks Department and environmental people and, you know, the big honchos, you know, like there's an ecologist on staff and so on. And we've had our first meeting with them, and, you know, it's going okay, but it's a tough process because, again, you know, you're dealing with people who sit in offices, and I don't know what they do all day, don't ask me. And sometimes you just get this disconnected feeling because it's all, again, oh, well, we can't do this, you know, there's a bylaw, blah, 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 blah. So it'll be slow going, but what we would like to see is having London declared a pollinator sanctuary within the city limits.
My name is Janet Keller. I'm one half of Beautiful Edibles. Pamela Reed is the other half of Beautiful Edibles. This site is the site that I care for most of the time, and so we've got a lot of demonstration gardens going on here. And she has a different kind of site. Basically, it's a production site for vegetables and organic product.
My name is Pamela Reed, and I'm co-owner of Beautiful Edibles. We've been at it for about 3 years now in London, and we're a kitchen garden consulting company, and our mission is to assist people who would like to grow more food close to their kitchen in their backyard. So,
yeah, we started this business because we both are like avid avid gardeners and dedicated organic gardeners, as well as our sort of educational background sort of meshed together. Pamela has a master's of environmental sustainability, so and she's again an urban gardener forever. She's been an urban gardener. She's a Londonite. I'm not. I came here. And I have a healthcare background, so in terms of that sort of healthcare science and the scientific background, so in terms of that, the mesh is that we decided to do some good for London and promote healthy eating and allow the zeitgeist to make changes, like sort of transition to being able to be more sustainable and probably eat a little bit healthier over the course of our growing season, and then perhaps even into the non-growing seasons that we have here in Canada.
This was a 3-car laneway. There was no garage, and we don't have a car, so we live car-free. And the asphalt was all bumpy, and it really wasn't serving, any use. So for a couple of years, I looked out the window and I thought, I've seen other people do something really kind of courageous and brave and unusual, and I'm going to do it too. So I talked my dad into, getting a jackhammer, and we came over and we broke up all the asphalt. Asphalt that was probably down for a good 50 years. 6-inch thick asphalt. It was a huge job, but we had it removed and recycled. And then we went to Home Depot and I bought some lumber and laid out a plan, and the boxes were built and created, and then the gate went in as a final bit of finishing of the project, so that the neighbors, wouldn't have to see it, but at the same time, I think they were still really curious about what was going on. So I definitely put the come over, take a peek through the garden gate. So yeah, the thinking of this was the reflectivity of the two houses. So it only gets about 3 hours of direct sunlight. We do have a mature Norway spruce tree, and by the time the sun gets over, but the houses are very bright, so the reflectivity, I've had no limitations regarding sunlight and watering. So we lay down 4 boxes, 4 feet by 7 feet, right in the laneway, enough space in between so I could use a wheelbarrow comfortably.
So we just took it easy. We started doing some seed saving and promoting things that way, and tried to figure out the market. It took us about a year to understand where it is we wanted to go. And raised bed boxes in urban areas are really a pretty good ideal starting place for people who are novices or want to regain some skills. It also helps mitigate some of the toxic issues that we have here, having any urban environment, and so you've got a nice confined spot where you can know what you're going to be doing with your growing, get you a good start. So this is a 4x4 starter box, basically. We set up as a demonstration box.
After seeing a water bill come July, a couple of really harsh Julys where we had about 3 weeks of complete drought, I became committed to hooking up every downspout of the house to a rain barrel system. Yeah, the rain barrels hold enough that I can water the 4 boxes quite easily. And he has gotten involved this year in having a small watering can. So I make sure if I know a big rain is coming to use the water out and then keep replenishing it. And it's saved me a considerable amount of money.
Indigenous people in North America have grown corn and beans and squash for a lot longer than we have. They found that if you grow them together, you've got a stalk for the corn, and it allows some height for some runner beans or any sort of beans that will go up. And the squash, if you have the squash on the ground, the squash will also take advantage of the height amongst the corn, and also the squash leaves keep the ground cool and relatively bug-free because of the little pokey aspects of the leaves and the vines. So they all sort of work together. They all pollinate each other. They help them grow better. They keep the ground in a satisfactory manner for all three sets of plants. So you get a good production, and it's a beautiful little site. You just grow the corn. The beans grow up around the corn, and the squash also. Not only does it keep it cool, the ground cool, but the squash can also grow up, so you get better production off of your squash.
This is the garden that only gets about 5 to 6 hours of direct sun a day. So the trees do draw a lot of water. So watching what the sun does, that's south. So the sun coming, I get about 2 hours, and then about 3 hours, and then about 2 hours. So some plants that require a lot of sun struggle. They will grow, but not to their fullest capacity. This year what I did, because this is the furthest garden, this is the hardest garden to manually bring water down to, I mounded the garden up into a spiral. So my weeper hose, which is circular, I don't have to have any kinks in it, and so I was able to sink the hose 2 or 3 inches below the surface of the soil, plant the plants right on top of it, and then I can just turn on the water, give it a good soaking once a week, and everything grows quite well. So right now you can still see there's kale, Swiss chard, there's some leaf lettuce. The flowers hang on the longest. I have a lot of volunteer sunflowers. The squirrels tend to bury their caches of seed back here. I did grow potatoes back here this year, and I've let some of my cauliflower and things go to seed, and I have a wall of beans. So that's the one garden. There's a morning glories that grow along the front here, and I had beans. So it creates a nice little barrier. So sitting on this side, everything's green and lush, and the bee activity is significant, and it's a very alive place to be. So
there's a Trillium grant that for a couple of years to help develop a food hub, and a good food sustainability hub at Crouch Library that we're active partners in. Is it's a community. They're trying to develop it as a community-driven urban agriculture and food security organization that will include things like food families, community kitchens, encouraging people to grow their own food in whatever environment it is, either container growing or in a community garden or that sort of thing.
I'm Jessie Robertson, and I run a company called Wildcraft Permaculture, and we do edible and sustainable landscape designs. I guess I first started gardening when I was doing my master's in Winnipeg, and it was the first time I'd actually had the space to do so, because growing up in downtown Toronto, I had a little postage stamp yard, and so I just started experimenting with it and fantasizing about having my own chickens, and grew what I could and kind of learned through trial and error, and then moved to Edmonton and was living in an apartment again and didn't have access to that, and so got into community gardening, and then started a gleaning operation in Edmonton because I thought there's so many people that already have fruit trees, and the stuff is out there, it's not always being picked and used. So that was very successful and is still going on there. Yeah, it just makes sense to grow your food closer to home, and you know what the seed source is, you know how it's been taken care of, whether it's been sprayed, you know that it's growing in healthy soil that doesn't have synthetic fertilizers in it, and it's also about security. So it's knowing that the food is healthy, but also having access to it and having those skills, so that even if you don't need to grow all your own food now, just doing a little bit of it and puttering with it gives you the confidence to know that if you do need to, that's a skill that you have, and I think that's very important. So through Wildcraft Permaculture, we do mostly residential projects, so converting front lawns to, well, not lawn anymore, but either native plants or food systems, or generally a mix of both. and some backyard projects as well. Usually not an entire conversion of the backyard. People still like to have some lawn to sit on or for the kids to play on. And then we have some public projects, and the biggest one is a 1 acre food forest that's in the Hamilton Road neighborhood, and that one uses entirely native plants. It's called the Carolinian Food Forest, and it's a really interesting project and unique as far as I know. And it's an evolving site. It's going to be many years before it's fully established, and it's experimental, so we're learning as we go and trying different techniques and seeing what plants work there. But it's really fun to be involved in and have the city's support in that. Some of my focus is also on workshops, so teaching those skills to people. Like last night we did a foraging walk, so even if there isn't, even if you live in an apartment and you don't have access to a community garden, there are lots of plants that are growing around that you can forage for free, and a lot of them are weeds, and they're extremely beneficial and healthier than a lot of the things we find in the grocery store, so nobody's going to wrap beyond the knuckles for picking them.
Can you name some of them?
Lamb's quarters, purslane. My community garden, I probably tick off some of my neighbors in the community garden sometimes because I leave lamb's quarters growing all over the place. I try not to let it go to seed, but I want some to go to seed because I harvest it quite a bit, and I dry it and use it in smoothies and things throughout the winter, and then make some pasta dishes with it and just use it as a green. So, and I actually planted purslane in my front yard, a type of golden purslane. Most people are trying to get rid of it, but it's very tasty and nutritious. And then last night we were picking autumn olives, which are an invasive species, but higher in lycopene than tomatoes are, and very good for you, and they're nitrogen fixers as well, so they help improve the soil. And what I really want to do is help support people in their learning and understanding of the system. So I do have clients that contact me and just want me to come and do the design, plant it, fairly hands-off. My ideal client is one that's working alongside me in the garden, and I'm teaching them as we go about the plants and their relationships with their soil and with each other, and then helping support them over the next couple of years as the garden gets established.
My name is Peter Fuster, and we hired Jesse to help redo our backyard. Originally it was just traditional with grass, and we wanted to go more sustainable, get away from any sort of thing that had to do with monoculture. And so she talked about many things. One of them were the hugel cultures, which we loved. Hugel is a German word for mound, and you'll see that underneath logs and sticks, they will break down over time and be a moisture and nutrient source. The first year we overseeded with legume nitrogen fixing plants to hold the soil and also to add nutrition.
So my ideal client is one that we develop that relationship and work with over a few years, so that then they have the confidence and knowledge to carry that system on. And I provide a blueprint basically of the garden. So there's a watercolor design and then a user guide, so it has a picture of each plant and what its function in the system is. So if you decide you want to replace that plant or it's not doing well in that space, that you would try and replace it with one that performs a similar function. So if it fixes nitrogen, then you would try and replace it with another nitrogen fixer to maintain the balance. And then I always encourage them that stays with the house. So if they ever sell the house, that's like the blueprints for the house. It stays with it, and then the next owner kind of knows what's going on and can utilize the system. This is sort of my experimental side yard. We have three fruit trees in here, an apricot, a pear, and an apple, and there's guilds developing around them. So I started just with small circles and working with plants that I came across and had left over, and have been adding things. So midsummer we added a few more things into here, and they're just kind of getting established. But basically a guild is like a mini ecosystem. So around those plants, those fruit trees, we've planted supporting things like nitrogen fixers and things that will attract pollinators and repel pests. So we have different flowers that come into bloom at different times to attract pollinators. Normally I've been planting garlic around them, and then I've just put in some perennial chives and things recently, and tansy, and there's some other aromatic things, herbs that repel pests as well. And then, yeah, there's a native, this vine is a nitrogen fixer and is a native plant that's an edible tuber called groundnut, Apios americana, and First Nations people harvested it they used to cultivate it, not in European terms. The Europeans had no idea that they were modifying the forests to produce the things they wanted, but things like Jerusalem artichoke and the groundnut, they were purposely planting and moving along with them and bringing the best tasting ones to spread around in their travel paths. I developed an interest in permaculture, which is designing the way that ecosystems design, and so permaculture doesn't necessarily have to be gardening. It can be applied to building systems and community systems, which is what I was doing when I lived in Edmonton. And then decided I wanted to focus on a smaller, more personal scale and work one-on-one with people at the food system level. So some of that is self-taught. Some of it I've been learning since I was 5-10 years old in the woods with my parents and at summer camps and from mentors along the way. And yeah, it's a continuous learning process.
So we're from Western University today, and we with Western Serves are working with Lifespin today. Yep. to help out with their garden today, help them out around their grounds, help them out with the store. So Western Serves is basically just a day of service for Western students to get involved in the community, and this is our part today. So really excited to be here and working with Lifespin.
Network 9 plum. Don't ask me, it's a dwarf, so it shouldn't go too much taller. My name is Celeste Lemire, and this is the little farm in the city.
Like, how long have you been doing urban gardening?
Well, it doesn't really matter where I've been. It's all gardening, but urban gardening when I moved to London in 2008. And then I found out about the community gardens, and so I had a plot there, and so I love the fresh green beans and peas, and they're my favorite vegetables, and you can't get them. Certainly can't get salsify anywhere.
I've never heard.
No. So for a long time you couldn't get yellow beets, and I can grow my own yellow beets. Food security and diversity. So I've got salsify in here, which is a root vegetable. They know in Europe. You can get it in all the farmers markets in Berlin, for instance. But no one knows anything about it here. It's a great root vegetable. It will last in the ground until June. So why don't we know anything about it? So I've been growing it for a few years. And also, I want zero input, zero output. I try not to put anything out, or as little out for yard waste pickup. If I can compost it, I'll compost it. And I want the soil to be better. I mean, organic can sometimes just mean mining the soil if you don't do anything to the soil, but I've got lactic acid bacteria in here which you can make yourself. I've got glacial minerals in here. I take all the chicken shells, the egg shells, and grind them up and put them on the soil. I've added mycorrhizae in here too, and you should see the worms in here. That's another reason why I can't let the chickens loose, because I don't want them eating my worms. Come on, chick, 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 chick. That's not supposed to happen. This is the roost. And this is the nest boxes. They have to be up a certain height. And then I put a golf ball in there so that they know where to lay. And I only have one. And I always go where the golf ball is. And not in here. So every once in a while I'll switch it. And what do? They go all back in there. This is the compost furnace. Well, this is not it. It's going to be the compost.
That's the hose that you've been growing.
Yes, the hose I've been growing. But this hose goes in the greenhouse under the soil and then back out. So there's actually two ends here. It'll be 6 feet in diameter, about 4 feet high. Leaves and wood chips and old straw or whatever. But you fill the hose with like a RV antifreeze or sugar water or something, and I'm going to have to put a small, like a pond pump in there. That's the only thing that's really confusing me a bit. But the compost will heat up and heat the water that's coiled inside the pile, and the pump will push it through underneath. It'll come back out and get reheated. Because a size that big, like 6 by 4.5, it's enough of a mass to keep consistently hot. And they're using larger compost furnaces to heat houses in Siberia, so it should heat my greenhouse. That's the theory. It's about, I don't know, 28 degrees in here. And I just planted less than a week ago. So I've got all these greens coming up, and you see it's not just for me, it's for my chickens. You should taste the honey. Some honey tastes like chemicals. They don't use chemicals on these. They're not my bees. I'm hosting them. It's a lot of work to learn how to raise bees. And there isn't like, build this and they'll come, you know, like the chicken coop. You make this high, they will sit on it. They're not going to sit someplace else. You make the nest box, they go, oh, that's a great place to put an egg. And they go in there. These are so many variables. The weather, the situation, the noise, the flowers, varroa mites, neonicotinoids, all kinds of, you know, they're at the mercy of the environment we've created. I have 3 different kinds of compost here. I've got your regular bin compost, I got a vermicompost, and I'm also doing bokashi compost.
Tell me about that one.
It's a Japanese form of fermented compost. They essentially pickle it, but without salt. They're using elemental microbes. So basically, you pickle it, and within 3 weeks, it can go into the ground and become soil. So, for instance, under that, some of my zucchinis and things, they're just now collapsing. I put bokashi compost, like a half a bucket of this stuff, and it looked like carrots and things, but you could tell that there was things going on. It was in the form of decomposing. The interesting thing about it is that it's completely anaerobic. There's no oxygen required, so all this turning and tossing just isn't necessary, and you can keep it in the house. It has fruit flies, so you open it outside, put things in it, and then bring it back in. But I have 2 bins there on my little porch that I'm doing bokashi. So everything, if the chickens don't eat it, then the worms won't eat it, then the microorganisms will eat it. So nothing needs to leave. And if we started doing, how much of our regular waste stream could we reduce if we had chickens and various forms of composting, which you can the bokashi and vermicompost you can do year round. You don't have to wait for the weather. And this thing will also create the compost furnace. At the end of the season, you've got fabulous compost. So there's 4 different ways to compost, I guess. Oh, here's one is the furnace. So, and these guys, well, I got a itty bitty little farm in the city. So here's a pretty ditty about farming in the city. Bees in the garden, hives on the roof, a hen house in the corner, chickens on the loose. Well, I got a itty bitty little farm in the city. So here's a nitty gritty about farming in the city. Hear the hens rejoicing at the break of day. Yard full of clover, gonna make some hay. Well, I got a itty bitty little farm in the city. So talk to your committee about farming in the city. Well, I would like to see the city adopt what's called transactional urban agriculture, where you are actually allowed to sell what you grow in your backyard. So for instance, I could legally sell my eggs. Now the city of Boston has spent 4 years working on a bylaw, and it covers all kinds of things, like you have to have a soil test and you have to register with the city, and it has to be organic, and they have a little logo that you have to put on your sign saying, and you're not allowed to sell legally unless you've gone through this process. I think it's a bit unwieldy, but they've got some really good points there. Soil should be tested and things. But I had this vision one day of people coming to Soho and walking down the street with their kids and buying garlic here and squash here and some kale and some eggs and some, chicory coffee, and so that the neighborhood would cease to be a food desert, would become a center for urban ag.
My passion is doing gardening, and also I'm trying to teach people how to use herbs for medicinal purposes and for eating. If you think about it, the forests are pristine. Nobody's done any pesticide usage on them. But at the same token, there's so many herbs that you can go out there and harvest yourself for eating. They might taste a little different, but if you learn how to prepare them, they're much more nutritional than even organic foods, because there's also pharmaceutical properties to it, but as well that they've got more minerals and vitamins than normal food that we have. There's a lot of things that people would like to learn about, and I'm giving free workshops so that people can learn about the properties of weeds and what they can eat as well. I begin my seminars with, I read a report from American Senate, and it said that 99% of the American soil is deficient in minerals, and it warns that if people eating it are deficient in minerals, they will get sick. And I ask people, when do you think that came from? And people are shocked to know that report came from 1936. And if you're in the forest, the reason I start with this is if you get a mosquito bite, and I see there's our friends around. If we get a mosquito bite, you just pick one of those and chew on it and put it on the sting, and it'll take care of the sting. It's also good for bee stings and different insect bites. Yeah, there's this is a white clover, this one. Yeah, this is clover. That's probably a red clover. Yeah, because that's the one that has the red blossom. Those the red clover, that's one of my favorites for a blood purifier, because they're easy to find, right? You just see the little red bulb on the top, and you just go and pick them. So my favorite for blood purifying are pretty simple because I can find it anywhere. There's a little girl that was sick. She lives just over here, and I went and she had the flu, so I went to find a blood purifier for her. So I just came here in the forest. It took me 10 minutes. I found red clover tops. I found yarrow and dandelion root. And then you put some ginger with that, and you've got a blood purifier. I think everybody should have a garden. I mean, if everybody had a garden, look how much less illness there would be, look how much less stress there would be on our healthcare system, how much less they would be spending on healthcare, and how much more money we would save in taxes. But I think that what's propelling this is, like I said, people want to be healed and not maintained on the one side, but also at the same time, I think that people are starting to become very afraid of what they're putting into their mouths, what they're buying from the stores. You hear about the GMOs, you hear about pesticides and herbicides and all the things. It's killing all the bees, and you know, the songbirds are disappearing because of the tobacco-based insecticides. And so we know that a lot of things are going on out there that aren't good, and what we're getting from the stores is not necessarily good because it's being used, the pesticides have been used on those as well. And if it's harming the bees and harming the birds, how could it be not harming us as well? And so I think a lot of people are afraid of knowing what they're eating. It might not be good for them. And I see a huge movement back towards growing gardens. And I am really happy to help people learn about that. And in the spring, some people will be talking to me about helping them do it in the spring, but I've been even approached by somebody that was thinking that maybe I could teach them in the winter so that it would prepare them for the spring so they feel a measure of competency before they even get the soil between their fingers.
I'm Kyle, Planting Seeds Landscaping, and I'm here at a market, at Cheapside Market, and I couldn't afford to eat healthy, so I kind of started the initiative of Planting Seeds Landscaping to start my bill payment as a landscaping company, and I saw such a need in London for sustainable landscapes in and around the city, farms, connections between farmers, that city-rural connection, as well as connections within the city. So I've been trying to build that into my business model as a way of building social enterprise to facilitate London coming into a more sustainable future, whether that be in sustainable technology or sustainable food production or changing the whole food system. So that's why I'm at markets, and that's why I'm proving that idea, is to actually prove that we can actually start making change in our system. And being a student at Western and Fanshawe, there's always the farmers markets, but they never really even served our needs. And then even with the introduction of a grocery store, well, the produce is spoiled and bad and none of it's organic and it's overpriced. It's kind of frustrating. So, and that's our solutions. I was like really frustrated, so that's kind of why I went to market myself.
Right.
Started the landscaping side of things, and yeah, everything is either grown by us. We pick up a few things like organic mushrooms and apples on the way back. So just to kind of bring more people into our booth, because we can't just sell leafy greens.
True.
There's not enough money for farmers just to live traditionally. That's also another thing we're trying to do. As a sociology major, I try to influence people's systems thinking, not just thinking of how the individual is affected, but how everyone's affected by the whole system. And that's kind of why I wanted to get the ball rolling with that. So I worked a full-time job and ran this business and did the landscaping contracts on top of that and worked another part-time job, and you still can't meet ends meet. That's when you know you have a problem in society. And I've really demonstrated that there's a need for society to change, or at least the way we access food, the way that we pay people, and the way that we actually value things in our current environment. Those all need to change. So we have the Garden Sisters project. We're trying to pass that off to Brescia College because literally it's not a sustainable project for my business to run, but I wanted to prove the concept. So we're trying to help other girls at the nutrition program take on that project, get through their funding, deal with administration. That's part of what we want to do, is help people set their own food systems, buy cheaper food for their organization, make it more accessible for their employees and that type of stuff. So we're going to do a big push for other enterprises and organizations, nonprofit, to actually supply them with food to both their employees and to their clients. So we're working with a few people in the city, so therapists, that we're actually supplying them vegetables as well. And we've been supplying restaurants as well, 4 in the city and 2 in Toronto, with produce throughout the season. So, and it's our first year growing, so we've been pretty proud of that. Yeah. And then the Garden Sisters project is a program that we got funded. $1,000 of it was funded through the Awesome London grant, which gave us the ability to get out in the field before we normally would get funded. And then we had another $5,000 grant from the Cambia Foundation, which enabled us to do the programming, get the garden going, and pay us at the end of the season, which I haven't made a cent off of, but yeah, we will eventually. But it's all about proving that concept, and hopefully that's the program that Brescia will take on next year. We can allow that to leverage funding for them to get it past their administrative issues, and because they can never prove the concept because they never get it passed. So hopefully that would be a good way to pass it on. So we want to do stuff like that where we can kind of prove concepts and then give it to the people that would really nourish that program and take it on as their own. And because they're already working with my sister's place, which is the other part of the program, we're able to actually do that already a lot easier, hopefully. So that type of thing I want to do more of, and help organizations get set up, not with just some guy who just get profit off of them, but do something good with that, you know what I mean? So there's too many crappy people profiting off our food system that we need to change that.
My name is Jeff Pastorius. I'm a coordinator here at On the Move Organics and the Root Cellar Cafe. On the Move Organics was started in 2008 as a very small local organic produce retailer and distributor. I spent the first few months learning where the local farms are around London and accessing that produce, bringing it into the city, heading out to the farms, bringing it into the city, and aggregating it, organizing it, and then distributing it directly to consumers. We had a little market stand that we opened at the Western Fair Farmers Market, where it's open Saturdays, 1 day a week, and we had a little stand outside. We found some traction there. I guess in a short period of time we realized that people are also interested in more sustainable ways of accessing local organic food. So the bike delivery program was born. The first portion of it was through a trailer that we attached to an old bike, and that worked out really well. So we hired a friend to design and manufacture a custom cargo bicycle, and that has been operating ever since. 6 years, we didn't expect to get this much time out of it. It's doing really well. And from there, things gathered momentum with the help of members of the community and my family. We managed to open up a space in the upstairs of the market that became our processing area for our local organic produce. And we developed home delivery boxes and packed home delivery boxes up there. And on Saturday it became a juice bar. And that worked out quite well, and we had a bit more traction, and a few more friends and family joined in, and we decided collectively that it was time for a larger space, that we needed a space where we could deliver more organic produce from. And so we found 623 Dundas, a beautiful little storefront that at the time was covered in dust and boxes, and in the back was a lot of work. We moonlighted by renovating and working through the day on produce distribution. After 6 to 8 months of renovations, we opened the Root Cellar Organic Cafe, which is another experiment in distribution of local organic food. And in a short window of time, people recognized it as an opportunity to access the produce that they don't normally interact with. So we found traction there, and we became quite busy. After a little less than a year, we decided that if we were going to move forward, it was time to do so. So we decided to rent the unit right beside us and expand into it and turn the cafe into a sit-down restaurant. This process has had planning behind it. but a lot of it had to do with an organic growth of the sector. This area here, we built in the dream, not really knowing if it would become a reality, but the dream that we'd be able to start producing our own local craft beer in the root cellar. And after our expansion, we realized that it was a possibility. And so the London Brewing Cooperative was born. Luckily it's actually the first, in Anglophone Canada, the first worker-owned cooperative brewery. We're very proud of that, and we also source local organic ingredients as much as possible. So keeping with the philosophy of on-the-move organics and root cellar, the London Brewing Cooperative is utilizing small-scale organic ingredients from local farmers. A big portion of urban agriculture, I believe, is an educational component. By interacting with your food, by learning how food grows and how it's complicated to grow organically with a decent amount of production, cyclically. So understanding that there's times in which certain crops grow well and other times they don't. Generates a level of appreciation for what it takes to be a local sustainable farmer. It allows for folks to interact with healthy food in a way that they might not otherwise be able to. And also creates a level of sustainability where we take green space that is otherwise grass or just unused space and turn it into something productive that's community oriented and feeds people.
Hello, my name is Jeff Johnson, and we, as a family, bought this beautiful property here on Balderstone in the City of London. And we bought it about 3 years ago, I guess it was 3 years ago. And part of the reason was this spectacular backyard, which a lot of houses in London have, these beautiful long backyards. And this backyard was so well laid out that we didn't really have to do too much in building it up or making it into something, because it was already set up. But there was still a lot of work to do, and as you know, as every gardener knows, it's always lots of work, but it's very rewarding. You get really fresh vegetables and you get to work in the ground, which I like to do. So anyway, I wanted to show you this beautiful pear tree that was here. And last year, which I think was a really great fruit year for many gardeners, we had over 500 pears on this tree. It was really amazing. And this year, for no reason that we know, only a handful of pears, basically no pears. So that kind of symbolizes what it's like with gardening too. Some years things are amazing, some years things aren't. And hi, here we are in the garden part, the vegetable garden, and it's about, I think it's pretty big, it's about 30 by 40 feet, so fairly large. We're very fortunate to have this much space. It's October and things are pretty much done. We still have some broccoli, a little bit, and we have some Swiss chard, we have kale, really nice kale, but that's about it. There's maybe a few handful of peppers still kicking around, but that's about it. So 2 years ago, I started by just yanking out all the weeds because it was already prepared as a garden. And then last year, we rototilled the garden with a machine and found the soil to be quite heavy in clay. This whole area has a lot of clay. So we brought in this year. We brought in about 4 yards of sand, pure sand. Wheelbarrowed it down here and topped it up and then worked it into the soil. And that way we were able to produce really nice carrots and beets and potatoes and things like that grow in the ground. Certain vegetables need a certain amount of sand or loose soil. Clay is difficult to grow root vegetables. But clay is also good because it holds moisture and really it holds nutrients. And so the combination of the two. Also, we added in compost this year, And you need to do that every year or two if you're growing vegetables. But we broke it down into rows, so we got a main row down the middle here, and then we have all our little individual rows going this way. Some years you've got to irrigate, so we have an irrigation system here. We have hoses that come out that come way up from back the top of the house, and the hoses come down. But this year we've hardly had to water at all, just the way it was with nature. You water a little bit in the spring just to get the young plants going, but boy, once they took off, that was about it. Back here you can see the artichokes, and they grow every year, so they're like a perennial. And in the fall, about this time of year, from now till Christmas, you can harvest them. And they're a root vegetable, kind of like a potato. And really nice for stir fries and things, and you don't have to do anything with them. They grow crazy. All that greenery will eventually die, and we'll just chop it off, and then you dig up the roots and cut off the roots and clean them up. And I really enjoy getting out in the garden, and to have that fresh produce. You know, it's such a bonus, and instant, like you're getting the best nutrients, the best freshness, all the leaves and the produce is so vital, so alive, so you're getting really good food. Like a size of a garden like this could easily feed, 2 or 3 families of food for a season of fresh food. And I'm kind of looking for someone who likes gardening to share next year, share in taking care of the garden. I think it's a good thing for community, because it gets, you'd have like a space like this if you had your neighbors, everybody contributing in a nice big space and then sharing the produce. It's just a way of bringing the community and the neighborhood together. So I like that aspect of gardening too.
Hi, I'm Lois Ward, and this is my garden. We've planted 2 different kinds of strawberries and oregano. I planted some other herbs that didn't take to this area. I do have wild nodding onions over under the trees. And this is a border, but it's also edible. Right. And I do eat from it for a few weeks out of the summer, which is really nice. I have to take care, like right now it's really overgrown, and so I'll mow it. And then I'm also going to thin some of the plants so I can give them to friends and stuff, because strawberries, they can get blights and so forth when they have not enough air room around them. Well, from my standpoint, permaculture is any kind of way of living where it allows you to use resources in a cyclical manner that you're not using them up, that they can be replenished in some way. Sustainable, I think some people use, but I think permaculture goes a little deeper, because you're not just looking at one aspect of how you live, but you're kind of looking at everything. So, as we develop the property, we're looking at making our house greener in a lot of ways. We're looking at our lifestyles being greener, yeah, it ends up permeating everything that you do in your life. This is the Black-Eyed Susans. And they actually were located elsewhere last year, and they just, they plant themselves wherever the seeds fall. And again, the finches love these flowers. They're a very important food source during the winter. So I just leave the flower heads on for them. They've already pretty well eaten all the seeds out of the, I think it's called a stiff blazing star. They're these long kind of squiggly. So down here I was telling you, there's the high saw. And last year it seeded out to make a whole bunch of baby high sauce, and it tastes like licorice. And I put this into my smoothies. It's actually a sweetener. It does give a sweet taste to it. It's really sweet, actually. Do you want to try it? Cameraman? She's got it.
Oh, this is sweet.
It's really nice.
Oh yeah, it's ever.
That's in here too. When you're talking about smoothies, there's lots of dandelions in the lawn, There's plantain, not purslane, but purslane over next to the sidewalk. I'm trying to think of all the stuff I take out of here. Dock, just wild dock, regular dock. I use it for my smoothies or for salads. Again, my husband's still getting used to a lot of the flavors. And he's like, "What tastes like grass?" He's just like, "Wait, what tastes like grass?" And I said, "Probably grass." I accidentally left it in. Or he'll say, "What tastes like dirt?" And I said, "Well, maybe dirt because I didn't wash it well enough." So
It's organic.
What's that?
It's organic.
It's organic, yeah. No, I think we're healthier for it to be eating from our own garden. I really love the fact that I can go out and usually 2 meals a day at least find things in our garden to have for dinner. Nice. So it's really nice. It's really awesome. Okay. So this is a tree that the city planted, which is a Chinese tree of some sort that is not really all that useful for creatures in this area of the world. But it does provide a little bit of shade and some support. And this year I talked to my neighbors next door about doing some plantings along here. And they said as long as it didn't get in the way of them opening their car doors, it's fine. So I planted the beans because I thought maybe their kids might be interested. And then I found out that their kids don't really like nature. And I thought it was an easy start. So this is a variety of beans here growing up. I've eaten a couple of the harvests from here. I've given them away to neighbors, our neighbors next door. Okay. So this is a yew tree. I don't know what kind of yew it is, but it was here when we bought the house. It's probably 40 years old, easily. It's never really been trimmed or anything. It's growing quite naturally. And a lot of people, when we first got the house, said, "Oh, you should chop that down. It's unsightly. It's going to affect the house," and so forth. But the first winter, it was filled with mourning doves. It's a natural roosting site for a whole flock of mourning doves. And what brings the mourning doves here is the shelter from the elements. And then there's obviously natural food sources in the area where they can get food all through the winter. And then the hawks come all winter long. And generally in our yard, they catch about 1 or 2 mourning doves a winter. But I know they catch others. So this is actually part of a very thriving ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And then as I've done some research, I find that all of the birds are pooping. And it creates a really nitrogen-rich area here. And so we took out the English ivy after it died this last winter. I've put plantings in here of hostas right now. From what I've heard, that hostas, when they're quite young, can be eaten, although I haven't tried it yet, when they're first sprouting up. I have ostrich ferns, which are from another part of our property that I moved over here. I'm also going to be moving the native violets and the what do you call it, the wild ginger into this area as well. So it'll be a combination of beautifully landscape kinds of things and then things you can eat if you want. And it'll be nourished by the birds and vice versa. Okay, so this corner of our yard is all about the forest. And as you can see, there's a forest behind our house that was never touched when they built this neighborhood. And it also was not touched when they built the apartment building behind us. It's still quite a young forest, and I guess from what I've heard, there's a few invasive type trees in there, but there are some black cherry trees and a few other things that bring in the squirrels, so I think there's some beneficial trees in it. And with that in mind, we've either planted or allowed certain things to just keep growing in this corner. It's around our compost bins, which can be unsightly, but this is actually kind of the most beautiful spring area for us. We have the wild violets. There's several different kinds of ferns through here. We have all kinds of spring ephemerals, native spring ephemerals that come up through this whole area. I planted the redbud probably about 3 years ago, and from what I heard, the redbud itself, the buds are edible, and I haven't yet tried them because it's still quite a young tree and I don't want to stress it out by harvesting anything. And most of the things that I've planted through here would be considered medicinals. I don't actively harvest them. I do let my dandelions go, and at about this time of year, I dig them up by the roots and I dry the roots and use them for tea all winter long. I've been picking the greens all summer, which is good. And I've started to get used to them. They're a little bit, they're a little bit bitter, especially as the leaves get bigger. Where I grew up, we had a field behind our house, and it was an old farmer's field that had gone fallow, and good portions of it had actually grown up with prairie grasses and prairie flowers, and it was so abundant with wildlife, not giant wildlife, but birds and insects, and I grew up there. And I feel that this property is kind of turning in that direction. Yeah, we have lots of sedges. I can't remember all the different kinds, but this is a porcupine sedge, and then some ryegrass that really likes the wet conditions. And we let it go to seed, and you can mow it. So if it falls into the regular lawn, you just mow it. It's not any issue. And it doesn't mind being mowed. It'll keep coming back. Okay, so this is one pawpaw. We have two of them. They're from the Carolinian ecosystem. They produce a fruit that's very soft on the inside. I guess kind of has a shape like a mango, and you scoop it out, and from what I heard, it tastes a bit like a banana. I haven't had fruit this year. In fact, as I said earlier, it was a very bad year for fruit, but last year there was a bunch of fruit at the top of this one that the squirrels ate. So I have a neighbor who said, I don't know why you're bothering with fruit trees, because the squirrels are going to eat everything, and if they don't get it, then the raccoons will. So we'll just have to share it. So they're very hardy. They don't get attacked by diseases. The Japanese beetles don't really touch them. I don't know what it is about them, but they're a beautiful leaf. They're quite exotic looking, actually. And they turn quite a pretty color in the fall. And they'll be about 20 feet tall. You can see that these trees here are dying, and so as they die, the pawpaws will be able to fill in that space. So what else can I tell you about my very wild backyard? So this whole area I'm thinking of as kind of a berry, cherry kind of patch. These are American plums, and we're actually going to give them away. There's this one and this one. I think that I have a friend who wants to guerrilla garden them somewhere by the Thames, and that might be a good thing for them. They're really scraggly, wild, crazy things, which is fine. And we've decided we want more sunlight in this part of the yard. We have a dog, and we like to use the yard sometimes, so a little bit more usable space is good. And then we have a mulberry that came up all on its own, and it was never very healthy, so I think that I'm going to just chop them down.
Yeah, we have lots of those too.
Yeah, they just come up everywhere. The birds just drop them. Back in here, as I said, is my raspberry patch. These are an ever-bearing raspberry. Anyway, they have a little burst in the early part of the summer with a few berries, and then at this time of year they're very abundant with berries, which is good. And then on this side I have, you can see the task. You can't see it. Nettles. I have a nettle patch over there. Nettles can be used as greens in the spring. It's kind of funny because a lot of people say they hate nettles because they can hurt your skin, and yet I don't mind the sensation because they've actually been used for people with arthritis for thousands of years. I think they just rub it on, and it creates like a burning sensation over the skin, which keeps the pain away from the joints. It's the same thing that they have that cayenne pepper rub for people with arthritis. It's the same sort of effect, I think. What else about nettles? I don't know. I like them. They're a weed, but I like them. A lot of people would just rip them out. First time I got stung, I was like, oh my God, I have nettles in my yard, and I was all excited. The only person in the world. And then I also have service berries back here. They're kind of little, but I think over the years they'll grow up.
Okay, urban agriculture to me is a solution to many global issues. climate change, competition over resources, energy and water. Like there are significant conflicts over fossil fuels and energy right now, and lots of issues in the transportation of energy. And water as well. Brazil has a drought. California has a significant drought. Australia had a drought for a 10-year period. And so why are we growing food in other areas when we can grow it here, and it has been done before? Besides, it's fun to do. When I started gardening, especially when I started growing food in my front yard, it became fun because I got to know my neighbors. I found everyone is essentially, like, I mean, in passing, people are very polite. You say hello or whatever. But if you walk with a baby or a dog, or if you have a garden, people have a common interest. And so there's a starting point or a jump off point for conversations. So I have gotten to know a lot of neighbors. I share food when I have extra with neighbors. Neighbors give me things. They know I'm passionate about gardens, and things just kind of arrive on my front step. I've received books, garden stakes. Rennie is a great source for pails, and I use pails for a number of things, and pots. My neighbor across the street, Gord, is handy with tools and I'm not, and he has helped me with the raised bed. He helped make a cold frame for me, and so relationships start to form in the neighborhood, and that's just a lot of fun. I actually grew up on a farm, but I can't say that I learned much of the how-to or the planning. I grew up in a family of 12 on a farm, and we were worker bees more than we were planners or designers. And I heard Chantry Casser from the Living Center do a talk at the library, and he talked about food forest gardening and permaculture. And that was a real seed for me. It really sparked an excitement, because food forest gardening is kind of mimicking what nature does. And so in nature, we don't haul fertilizer to feed the plants or the forest. We don't use pesticides. We don't water. So it's a more of a healthy ecosystem. So when I started gardening here on the property in the fall of 2011, the first thing I did was plant fruit trees and shrubs. And then I started food forest gardening. You also don't rototill. And that's because we don't want to kill the life in the soil. That is very beneficial. Like, you know, there's lots of life, a variety of life, worms in particular though, that will create tunnels to allow the water to penetrate into the root system. They poop, leave fertilizer, so you don't want to disturb that. So in the fall of 2011 in the backyard, I instead of tilling it, I suppressed grass and weeds by layering things. So I made sure the soil was really wet. I sprinkled manure. What did I do? Then I put cardboard, made sure it was really wet, put some more manure, and then I put about 6 to 8 inches of straw. Then I put 2 to 3 inches of compost on top, and then I collected leaves from the neighborhood. And it's amazing. A friend of mine told me years ago that he collected 100 bags of leaves for his garden. I'm going, yeah, right. But I did. I collected well over 100, and what I did was I covered my garden beds, and then I created a great big leaf bin, and within the leaf bin I also layered with soil and ensured it was wet. And I used that for mulch in my garden the following year, and it just continued to add nutrients, and by having it as a mulch, I didn't require to water the garden as much. And so that was the fall. In the spring, I also set up a rain harvesting system, and so I had, 6 rain barrels, and and that was, so the spring of 2012 is when I connected with Food Not Lawns as well. And Food Not Lawns is, and I believe this to be true, it is an international kind of movement, and the thought is to turn yards into gardens and neighborhoods into community. And I've experienced that. And so with Food Not Lawns, Narcisse actually brought that to London, and we were having meetings, I guess in the fall of 2011. But then I had met another neighbor that was interested, and so we decided to do a local kind of chapter, and Patty, who lives in the neighborhood, put flyers throughout the neighborhood, and we invited people to come, as well as I had friends from outside of the neighborhood and a few people from Food Not Lawns come. And that's when I had the raised bed in my entire front yard built and began gardening in the front yard. And I should go back, 2011 I also did my boulevard as well, and so I have food plants, trees, and rhubarb and strawberries and teas and flowers to attract the pollinators in the boulevard. Well, it's interesting that people don't. You're the first person to ask that in a long time. When I first started, that was a common question, and my thought was, if they did take things, I was okay with it, because I have a backyard garden. There's lots that I plant and lots that I harvest, and I usually have an abundance. But it was interesting, people have stopped and looked at things, and my neighbors are very protective. I know one year, a young adult seemed to be pulling on the apple tree, and a neighbor across the street reprimanded him. And another year, someone was kind of bending down to look at my strawberries, and the neighbor across the street said, "You can't do that." But I actually encourage it. Like, this is a school corridor, right, and so lots of families go down the street 2 times a day, and the children are particularly delightful to see the flowers and to pick strawberries. And so I have also offered strawberry plants. The beauty of planting perennial plants is that they multiply. So strawberries run, and so this coming fall or spring I will have lots of strawberry plants to give to people. Rhubarb you can cut, the perennial or divide, and the perennial plants you can divide for sharing. So it is, to me, that is a more sustainable way of growing foods when you incorporate the perennial food trees, shrubs, vines, strawberries and raspberries, rhubarb, what have you.
Okay, this is a solar oven. I'm able to cook casseroles, bake bread. Today I have brownies in the oven, and I put this in perhaps 40 minutes ago, and so it's almost ready. The temperature is at 200 right now. Essentially a solar oven, or this particular one, is a box within a box with insulation in between. And the interior of the box is painted black so as to absorb the heat. And then we have additional reflectors to also ensure that the sun is intense over the box. So I'll open this up. I also have some tea. Just going to close this up.
Oh, it's tasty. Anise. Very nice.
After I heard Chantry Casser from the Living Center talk, he recommended several books, and I bought them right away. So one is Edible Forest Gardening by David Jackie and Eric Tonsmeyer, and the other one is Gaia's Garden, and our public library has this book, by the way, and it's awesome, and by Toby Hemingway, and it describes the layering, and it also suggests plants like food forest gardening. There are plants that will have long tap roots and will draw up nutrients that we don't get from our fertilizers. And there are plants that will fix nitrogen, attract pollinators, confuse pests. I planted, and I will do this shortly, I'm going to be planting garlic throughout my gardens, but especially around the fruit trees, because it will confuse the pest. And I plant herbs and mints and this type of thing. They're the smelly ones, it just confuses the senses, and the theory is that you have less pest. The initial investment, it does cost, because I bought quite a few fruit trees and shrubs, but my hope is, especially with the drying in of leaves, and I'm also learning, I've experimented with planting what's called green manures. So these are plants that are living plants like buckwheat or clover, and they have nutrients for other plants. So I try not to leave bare soil. I'll fill it in, like in my boulevard I had spaces, so I planted buckwheat, and I can cut that at least twice, and when I cut it, the green, I leave it, so I chop and drop, leave it on the soil, and it's adding nutrients to the soil. Meanwhile, it will grow again, and it has a white flower, and the bees just love it. And I also save my eggshells, and I crush them up, and has lots of calcium. I will put that into my garden. I grow comfrey as another plant that has a lot of nutrients, and nettle. So I make what is called compost tea. So you take the comfrey or nettle and you put it in a bucket and chop it up, kind of thing, and put water in it, let it sit, stir it up, and then use it in your garden as a nutrient. Okay, the other thing that I'm interested in is tapping trees, and there are a variety of trees that you can tap for both either sap or for turning sap into syrup. Maple trees, the walnuts, the hickories are the ones I'm familiar with, and I have a simple system. I just managed to get this drill, hand drill. I have to buy the bits at the Western Fair Market, so I would drill a hole in the tree, put this little gizmo in there to draw out the sap, and then I would use my handy ice cream bucket and hook it onto the tree so that the sap would flow into my bucket. And since I prefer not to use a lot of energy, my intent would to drink the just to drink the sap. It has a lot of nutrients in, so that's one of my interests. Another interest is to collect the meat of the nuts, and so you can collect the meat from walnuts and hickories, and that's what they look like when they've fallen from the tree. And so, like the hickory is an easy one; it just breaks. So you take the outer husk off, and this one you need gloves, and you take the husk off as well, and you end up with. They come in various sizes, walnuts like this. Very difficult to crack though. I had purchased a nut cracker. Ready?
Okay, I'm Shantri Kasera, co-director of Spirit of the Earth, the Living Center, just outside of Lambeth. Came onto this land in 1983. When I moved here, there was hardly any trees on this property. My great-grandmother was a herbalist, and I grew up in London, and I wanted to have a space to grow plants, garden, food, and to bring that in. And it was focused primarily on sustainability, I guess, or being more like a homesteader of taking care of and raising a lot of my own food. And back in '83, after I moved here, I would say by the time 1984, '85 were here, people were coming out here for classes. They wanted to learn more. And in the early days, for the first 3 years I was here, I was growing organic vegetables, going to the farmers markets and selling organic food. And unfortunately, it didn't do very well because nobody knew what organic was back then, 30 years ago. So I realized that I started going to the farmers markets and doing, I was educating people who were there. And that's why this place became an educational center. And here we are 31 years later, still sharing and offering those services to people from a wide variety of different programs, workshops, experiential things, from wild food foraging to forest gardening to permaculture to deep ecology and nutrition. Okay, so this area right here has a hazelnut grove, there's some pecans up ahead, there's some heartnut trees, the peach trees over here. This is a very wonderful spot because it has the pond just around the corner, and the pond creates a beautiful microclimate for some of these trees, which do quite well. So this is our youngest forest garden. So this one's about 10 or 12 years old. So most of these trees are probably no more than 12 years old. Each of these trees, we have about 2 rows of apple trees, a row of plum trees, and then some cherries and some other fruit up here. And then to the left is some hazelnuts. So it's lower land and gradually gets higher as you go towards the pond. So each of these trees, if you notice that some of them have, actually most of them have ribbons on them, and the ribbons have different colors. So the ribbons that you might see that have sort of a yellowish golden color, those are from our permaculture students who are studying with us this year. You'll find the odd one, the bluish ribbon, those are from students from 2 years ago. And then there's some white ribbons from students 3 years ago. So what it is every student who comes to study our permaculture course, it's a 4-season permaculture course, they get a tree and they take care of that tree. They prune it, they take care of it, they plant it, and they create these community polycultures, and they take care of it. So this here is an old foundation of a barn that was built here in 1912 to 1914, which is when the first family moved here. So we took the barn down because the foundation was really starting to go. So what our dream and vision is to build a bioshelter here. It would be about double the size of this barn. It'd be a circular building, actually be more like a spiral building, 3 stories high. And the first level would be more like a greenhouse and the barn area. And second area, or second floor, would be more of a teaching space. The thing about a bioshelter is it's not a greenhouse, it's like a living cell. It creates an ecosystem, which means it can collect its own water, it can collect its own heat. You don't need a wood stove, you don't need any kind of heat. So it's self-sustaining, self-generating itself. So anyways, that's our goal, to start building this next year. So we're still working on clearing this out, taking it down, and it'll probably be one of the first bioshelters going to be built here in Ontario. And it's probably going to be a 5-year process of building this because it's made out of all natural materials. My dream is always to build a greenhouse. So this is an Earthship greenhouse, so it's made out of rubber tires. And there's about 300 tires in here. The ones you see on top are the small tires. As you go further down, they actually become bigger and bigger tires. And what it is the heat comes in through the glass, warms up the space, gets nice and warm in here, but then the heat can't get out because it's all stored in this biomass of tires. Each tire has about 2 to 3 wheelbarrows of soil in it. So you can imagine how heavy one tire would be, how to move one tire full of 2 to 3 wheelbarrows of soil. So it's also called ram earth construction. So what you do is you take a tire, somebody shoveling in soil, and the other person is just ramming it in. So every tire is really, really packed. So in this greenhouse, it's a passive solar greenhouse, so we can grow food in here year-round. It doesn't freeze in here. So we got the fig trees in here, we got tomatoes, we got lettuces, greens, this passion fruit in here. There's a few things right here in this solarium area, which is more tropical plants, which are some of them are going to come into the house. And this Earthship greenhouse wraps around the lodge on the south side and the west side, which means it's then helping keep the lodge or the classroom warmer. And then when we have a class like we did today, the heat from there then can come back into the greenhouse. So anyways, this is called Earthship construction, which is going to be part of the design for the bioshelter. And this is around 1,000 square feet. One of the things I'm changing with this is how to make everything on those shelves become only from this property, only local plants, not from somewhere else. So that's what I'm in the process of bringing that in. So anyways, I wanted to share that with you because it's one of the things that I believe, one of the things I'm sharing now with all my herb students is how to have community herbalists or bioregional herbalists, because I believe that there should be a herbalist in every single subdivision or every small town to really help us to stay healthy. And I believe that the herbs that we grow in our region are the ones that we're going to need. And if something ever happened and we couldn't get plants from China, India, from the Amazon, from different parts of the world, we got to know our plants really, really well. The plants that grow here are the plants that our bodies need because this is where we are growing. In our kitchen, we grow a lot of sprouts and baby greens and microgreens. And these 2 shelves pretty much provide all the greens that we need for the winter. Well, there's a little bit in the greenhouse that comes in too for, I guess, November, early December, and again, probably in March we start harvesting things from the greenhouse. So this kitchen provides us with the greens for December, January, February, March. So what we do is we soak the seeds, we soak them sprout them for about 2 days. This one probably got uncovered this morning. So this is probably day 3 or 4. So this is buckwheat, this one's sunflower, and these big ones over here are peas. So once these greens are harvested and put into whatever juice, smoothie, salads, or we're going to use it, once it's harvested, the mess we got downstairs, we got a worm composter. That soil breaks down and is ready to be reused again. About a month, 5 weeks, and the soil looks like this. So then all I do so a lot of times when people say organic food is expensive, that's probably less than 5 cents, 10 cents max for just to buy these few seeds. Spread them out. You leave a little moat along the side. It's one way that I stay connected. So even like being a gardener, someone loves to grow food. This is one way I can stay connected. I feel like it's springtime, right? But the neatest thing, you plant it, and then within 7 days, 10 days, you can already be enjoying eating it. That's that. So then you water, and you cover it up with another tray. Once the seeds start to grow, so the tray's on top just so the seed thinks it's nighttime or it's in the soil. The seeds will come up uniformly. I water until I start seeing a little bit of moisture coming around the sides. So because they're going to stay covered for about probably 2 days because there's a little bit of water coming through. It's covered up. And then when I see the tray starting to lift, I know it's time to uncover it. So that's the one I covered just now. So by tomorrow, those will be green. These are probably uncovered 2 days ago, and probably start eating them tomorrow, the next day. So it's just amazing how quickly. So how much time I spend on this is maybe 10 minutes every other day. Look at all this beautiful. To water this obviously just takes a few minutes. I don't water every day. Like I said, every other day. Okay, so this is the classroom. It's heated with wood, with a wood stove. It's insulated. As I mentioned, it was just a big concrete floor in one room. So now with the greenhouse that wraps around it, what that does is helps to keep the classroom warmer. And also there's a lot of light that comes in through the greenhouse or through the big sliding doors and double doors. And so it's amazing how much less wood we have to burn now because there's such a, it's almost like a double before the wind or before the cold can get in here. On sunny days it's just absolutely amazingly warm in here. So anyways, we just finished the class. Okay, so one of the passions or one of the things that I'm really exploring a lot and researching and then demonstrating it is how to create microclimates. So what we're working on right now is creating these microclimates where we can grow the kiwis, the almond trees, the persimmons, many of the plants that are, what's the word? The potential that they can grow here now because of how the climate has changed in this area. So in the garden we have actually created double windbreaks where the wind has to go through one windbreak to another windbreak before it finally reaches this garden, and to be able to grow things in there. So what I'm exploring is how can we actually grow things in a garden for 9 to 10 months of the year with no plastic and with no glass. It's just the way you landscape. And by landscaping in a certain way, you reduce the wind intensity or the cold, the windshield cold, to create that microclimate. So one of the things about having creating the microclimate regarding from sustainability is that you're designing it a certain way so that you can grow things for a longer period of time of the growing season. What that means is it reduces your food bills, it reduces your energy bills for heating a home, and how it gives you fresher food for a large part of the year. So for me, I can come out into these gardens end of March, well, early April. And I could probably find at least 20 to 30, maybe even up to 40 plants that I can actually harvest already.
The local food movement, and Food Not Lawns specifically, is trying to address a lot of these issues that you see in a global industrial food system. Within London, we have a very thriving, I would say, restaurant scene, and specifically we're shifting towards a more local one. So you've got retailers like On the Move Organics, The Root Cellar, Veg Out, Organic Works that are all trying to source locally and organically. You have different community gardens that are springing up, which then serve the needs of the community for healthy food and available food. You've got different groups like Food Not Lawns and London Cycle, which kind of collaborates with us for our food foraging tours, who are then trying to directly address it in a very grassroots way. So there are multiple different approaches that you see in the local food movement in London, which I'm really starting to notice and appreciate more. And all of these actions are addressing the inequalities and the issues with the environment and health with the global industrial food system. That's about it. Is that good?
Well done. Yes.
I'm like, I can talk forever.
Yes, that's good.
Don't tell us what to eat, don't tell us what to grow. We're saving our own seeds, and that's what we'll sow. Your game of Monopoly leaves little choice. If you don't tell us what to grow, we won't tell you where to go. I want to eat food that's organic, so why should this make you panic? We should have a say about feeding ourselves, so get those GMOs off at the shelf. Well, have you heard that no means no? Take this message to the PMO. Yesterday's farmers got caught in your trap. Today and tomorrow's farmers aren't taking your crap. Don't tell us what to eat, don't tell us what to grow. We're saving our own seeds, and that's what we'll sow. Your game of Monopoly leaves little choice. If you don't tell us what to grow, we won't tell you where to go. Well, I saw you snooping around our gardens, and who made you produce warden? Genetic testing may increase your wealth. How about testing what it does to our health? I want no part of your monoculture, and I see you're circling like vultures. You're after our land, you're after our seeds. There's several ways to interpret your greed. Don't tell us what to eat, don't tell us what to grow. We're saving our own seeds, and that's what we'll sow. Your game of Monopoly leaves little choice. If you don't tell us what to grow, we won't tell you where to go.